welcome to the Tea and a Butty podcast with me, Dominic.
And me, Erica.
Today we're going to be talking about Liverpool.
Yay!
Oh yeah, Fab and Gear, Liverpool. Yeah, you know. Right there, lad. About the Beatles.
Liverpool for Beatles fans.
For Beatles fans, yeah.
In case you don't know, in case you've stumbled upon us by accident, we're huge Beatles fans.
We are huge Beatles fans, and the podcasts we used to do before we got Tea and a Buddy going were about the Beatles exclusively, so
yeah.
This one's no different. This episode's no different. It's exclusively about the Beatles.
Yeah. So if you're not a fan, we do apologize, but hopefully maybe you'll hear something that might interest you. And
yeah, because, I mean, the story is very interesting.
Well, if you're interested in history at all.
Historical.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Liverpool is a very historical city anyway, without the Beatles' influence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nowadays it's like, yeah, you know, because, I mean, there's that old joke that goes around the UK. It's like, oh, Liverpool, that's all they ever bang on about is the Beatles were born there, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a pretty cool thing to have, you know, like to have the world's greatest band.
Yeah. One of the main reasons we decided to go ahead with this podcast, though, knowing that maybe, you know, not all of our audience might be into the Beatles, is because we do have enough Beatle people who have, like, asked us questions over time, you know.
Yeah, because we've done the tours and everything. We've been to Liverpool several times and, you know.
Yeah, so they want to know, like, is this site worth visiting?
Yeah.
Is this tour worth taking? Is this museum worth going to?
Well, we did it for your mum, didn't we? You know?
Yeah,
Who's also a big Beatles fan.
Yeah. So basically, my mom and her boyfriend went there fairly recently.
A couple of years ago,
relatively speaking, yeah. And they were just like, they came to us to basically plan their itinerary for them because they if you're a Beatles fan, you know, like, all the main sites that there are to see, or I mean, sort of in theory. Anyway.
I mean, you know, there's the Cavern Club, surely.
Well, yeah.
That's a big site.
But you don't know everything, or you might just not think about things.
I mean, casual fans usually do the Beatles Magical Mystery Tour, or the Magical History Tour, I think it's called. And it goes around in that bus that's done up like the Beatles Magical Mystery Tour bus was in 1967. It's not the original bus, for those wondering. It's a newer model.
Yeah.
But it's done all psychedelia and all that, you know, psychedelia and everything.
I think there's several tours like that. I think there's a taxi tour also.
It's Liverpool. I mean, pretty much everyone, if you're not in the Beatles tour game, then... So
if you're into the Beatles, but you don't want to go, like, sort of in-depth into all these sites, then you can choose
the taxi tour and the Magical History Tour.
They're going to take you to all the main sites, you know, kind of do a Clark Griswold, let you out, like, let you look at it, snap a picture, and then get back on. And
that's not to say they don't know what they're talking about either, you know, because the tour guides are quite knowledgeable. But, it's not very in-depth because it keeps to a schedule.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just like a couple of hours here because they want to get you around all the... They want to hit all the major points. Yeah. And get you home, you know.
So let's talk about our major.
Our itinerary.
Yeah, the main things that we would want to
The Dominic and Erica Beatles authorized itinerary.
Yeah.
For the hardcore Beatles nut who wants to see things.
Yeah.
First on my one is the National Trust Tour. Now, not many hardcore fans seem to know... Well, hardcore fans that I thought were hardcore, not many seem to really know about this tour, or seem to think that it's just like, oh, you just see the outside of their houses.
Yeah. Or they think it's part of these other tours, because these other tours take you to... Okay, first of all, the National Trust Tour are John and Paul's...
Childhood homes,
childhood in quotation marks.
Menlove Avenue, Mendips, and 24th Road.
And those are the houses that they lived in...
As teenagers.
Yeah, when they were becoming the Beatles.
Yeah, when they were the Beatles.
Yeah.
Because... When they'd left home for London, when they were actually the Beatles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the last house in Liverpool they lived in before they moved,
So, I mean, obviously, some of their earlier homes... are still there as well.
I think,
but if you're not, unless you're a really, really hardcore fan, you probably maybe don't care about those as much.
Yeah,
it's more interesting.
There's not so much history there.
There's not so much Beatles history.
Yes.
Yeah. So these are the two homes that John and Paul lived in. They would go to each other's houses and work on songs.
It was just across
together.
a golf course, which is still there.
Yeah. And the National Trust owns these houses
now. Yeah. Yoko bought John's house. It wasn't owned by Mimi anymore because she died in 1991, and she wasn't.
Mimi was John's aunt.
Mimi,
for anybody who doesn't know, yeah.
Mimi was John's aunt who owned the house, and when the Beatles became the Beatles, John bought her a house in Dorset, and she moved there, and so that was sold to someone else, and whoever lived there in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah.
And 90s, I guess, because I don't know when Yoko bought it. Yoko is John's second wife, for anyone who isn't unfamiliar with Yoko.
Right.
And she bought it she donated it to the National Trust.
Yeah.
If for those Beatles fans who know that reference. And they did it up. They restored it to how it would have looked when John lived there as a boy, the 1950s decor, and they had a custodian there. They have a custodian there.
Yeah.
They did the same with Paul's about a couple of years later.
They took old photographs from inside the house, and they really painstakingly tried to find the same types of furniture pieces.
Obviously not
everything.
the original furniture.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not actually sitting on John's bed.
I mean, you never know. They might have lucked
out somewhere.
They wouldn't have known, but yeah, so they're not the actual. Although when I went into John Lennon's house, I did sit down on the bed pretending that, okay, this is where John Lennon slept.
But John Lennon's body's laying,
Yeah.
But no, the thing for me about John's house was, looking out the window.
Yeah.
And you look out the window, and obviously the road looks a slightly bit different, and, houses may look a little bit different. The cars obviously do. But, and we were thinking about it, and I think your mum said it too, and when she was looking at the window, it's like, oh, his mother died just down the road.
Yeah.
And that kind of resonated with her a bit.
Yeah, because she was just like, he could have seen it. Had he been home and in his room, he could have seen it happen from his bedroom.
Yeah, he could have. Yeah, he literally could have seen it happen from his bedroom, because it was only down the road that his mother was killed in a car accident. She was knocked down by a car in 1958, 59. I'm not too sure about the dates on that. So yeah, that affected him for the rest of his life and everything. So yeah, that was and it was just down the road from where, because I think she'd just been to see, because Mimi was his sister. Yeah Anyway, getting into the story there a little bit too much. And what I was going to say is, the thing for me was just looking out the window and seeing what he would have seen, and his inspiration of just looking around and what he would have thought and what he would think about it today, really, because I know the Beatles were a massive thing when he was alive and everything, but he would be like, oh, the National Trust bought my old house, because Paul still thinks it's a trip.
Yeah.
And the BBC, I think, or maybe it was ITV, when the National Trust bought his house, they did a little documentary on restoring it and everything, and people were going in, they were going in thinking, oh, if we peel back the wallpaper, we're going to find some Beatle lyrics written on the wall. That's what they were hoping for. And they peeled back something in Paul's bedroom, and it was like some graffiti from whoever had lived there, in the 80s or something, And it's like, back then they didn't really, they might have known, oh, this is Paul McCartney's old house, but they never really thought about it,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another one they redid, and they had all the things, had all the period furniture.
Yeah.
Even down to the armchair in Paul's living room that was gnawed off or something, wasn't it?
I don't
They had a picture of it.
Yeah.
And I think that the custodian was like, oh, do you know why Paul's sitting like that, or his legs over the arm of the chair like that? It's because the chair's arm was all gnawed off or something, or ripped off or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was a piano obviously in the room, because Jim, his dad, played piano. And Mike McCartney, Paul's brother, bought this piano at auction. Paul bought the piano at auction, thinking it was their old piano.
Yeah.
And he came to Mike with it, and he said, "Oh, you should give this to the National Trust, put it back in the house or whatever." And he's like, "It's not our piano." It's like, it's not our piano, Paul. It's like, what? You've just paid this huge amount of money. It's not our. It never. I know our piano. It wasn't this one, because it had whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just so funny, Paul, like, shelling out all this money, at an auction to buy back this piano, because he's very into buying back stuff that has to do with him. But carrying on.
Yeah.
I went on a bit there. Sorry.
Yeah. Also, just as a little aside, recently on James, I say recently, you guys. It wasn't like yesterday.
It was like recently. It's recent enough. If you're
Recent
familiar
compared to
with
the
the
number
Late
of
Show by
years I've
James,
been on the earth.
if you're familiar with the Late Show by James Corden, Late Show with James Corden, he does the carpool karaoke thing where he has celebrities in the car and he sings their songs and everything. Well, he did one with Paul McCartney, which was a big score in Liverpool itself. And so he's driving around Liverpool, and they went back to his old house, and he said he'd never been there since he'd left in the 60s, but everybody's like, yeah, that's not technically true.
Well, I don't know if he'd been inside, but
I don't know if he'd been inside, but a lot of people say he's been back and stuff, and showing his kids, Stella McCartney, the fashion designer, and everything.
So if you want to see inside the house, if you are not going to Liverpool anytime soon, that's an episode to check out.
Yes, yeah.
And I think you can find it on YouTube, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so the National Trust has a tour, a combined tour. They're the only ones that you can see inside these houses with, and you have to book through them.
They're the only ones.
Yeah.
And it's not so much. I think it's like 25 quid.
Oh, I can't remember the price at all.
They might have think, but there's opening times. There's times when they're in season. I think they're closed they're closed from like October to like March or something. It's on the website anyway, thenationaltrust.org maybe, or .co.uk, the Beatles tours, and all the information is on that. Yeah,
and you have to book through them if you're interested, but that probably was my favorite thing that we did in Liverpool.
And it was something that we definitely, we wanted to do, because we were just like, oh, we've got to do this.
Yeah.
But it's funny, as I said before, people are like, oh, is it worth doing? And I'm like, you're a massive Beatles fan. You're in love with John and Paul.
Yeah.
You've got to go and see this. It's such a great thing. It's so cool.
Because my mom was a little bit worried that her boyfriend wasn't going to be that interested, because he is a Beatles fan, but he's not quite as hardcore. She's as hardcore as Dominic and myself, but
it's not dyed in the wool yet.
But her boyfriend is not.
He's getting there.
Quite there yet. Yeah. So she was afraid that he was just going to be like, okay, yeah, cool, some old houses, but I think
old houses,
but I think he enjoyed it as well. And I mean, we could probably make an entire podcast just talking about this tour, but we better move on to the next.
I think we
point.
have actually at some point. Maybe we did. The next flashpoint on the Beatles sites is the Cavern Club.
Oh yeah. That's a must.
That's a must. That's a must, obviously. The Beatles played there 263 times. It's the birthplace of the Beatles. Mm-hmm. It's where everybody, where they got famous, where they were on stage and they first heard that, Please Please Me, it went to number one or whatever. Mm-hmm. And of course they had a lot of fans, really get into them there. Now, we have to say it's not the original Cavern. It's not in the original spot. Mostly.
Some of it is.
Some of it is, but some of it isn't. It's not, because a lot of people find, who were there, because we've got a couple of people on Facebook who used to, went to Liverpool in the 60s and went to the original Cavern. And this one is nothing like it was before. Yeah. And it's not because, they've got to have health and safety and stuff that, they've got to,
but supposedly it's pretty close.
It's pretty close, yeah.
So the Cavern Club, obviously, is underground. Several.
It's on Matthew Street in Liverpool.
Floors underground. I can't remember how many.
I think it's about three or
flights of stairs.
3 or 4 flights of stairs.
Yeah. And what happened is, after the popularity started going down, after the 60s, I think in the 80s sometime, they decided to fill it in.
In the 70s, they closed it.
Yeah.
In the mid 70s, they closed it, and Liverpool Town Council flattened the buildings on top. Mm-hmm. The whole cellar bit was filled in, and they made a car park on top of it, the parking lot. I guess in the 90s or something, they suddenly realised, oh, wait a minute. That's a big historical site that we've just paved over there.
Yeah.
And tourists are coming and they want to know where the Beatles played in the cavern, and we have to say, oh, it's where that parking lot is now,
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, so
it's under there.
Yeah. So they've built Matthew Street back up again now. It's got shops, and the Grapes is still there.
Other pubs and
stuff are still there.
Bars, and I think there's some clubs too.
Yeah, there's some clubs, yeah. And so they built it back up, and they where Cavern Walks is, that's underground, that little shopping centre just off Matthew Street. Mm-hmm. That's apparently where the real cavern was.
Where the actual stage used to be, yeah. Yeah,
where the actual stage used to be. I think they've got even a little plaque or something on the floor. So that's pretty cool. But the actual Cavern Club has been moved up a bit further up Matthew
Just
Street.
a little bit, because when you go there, they do still have on the wall, this is where the actual door was that goes down
into the Cavern Club. Yeah.
The original door. Entrance. Yeah, which I think is now. It's an exit. It's like a fire exit, I think.
I think it's a fire exit, or is it right next to Next? It's like a store.
I'm not sure, but I think it is a fire exit to the new Cavern Club, which is on, I think, something like 70% of the original
70
site.
or 80% it is, yeah.
So, I mean, it's close.
Paul's played there, anyway.
Yeah.
Several acts have played there.
A lot of modern.
Yeah, a lot of modern acts want to go and play there. Oasis, just Blur,
so they can
everyone, just so they can say, oh, we played the Cavern Club,
Yeah. I think Ed Sheeran.
All the today's stars. So it's still a big music venue,
Yeah.
And it always will be.
And Paul, and like you said, Paul's played there a couple times. So the Beatles, maybe not, but Paul, yes.
The Beatles played in Cavern Walks.
Yeah.
Which is a shopping centre.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So then, across the street from the Cavern
is the Grapes pub.
Yeah. And that's another site that we recommend if you're a Beatles fan.
If you're a hardcore Beatles fan, because that's where the Beatles used to go to have a drink after they played at the Cavern. Mm-hmm. And they get together there. And there's a famous photo of them, and there's a booth that they sat in. This is when they played with Pete Best. And Pete Best was their original drummer before Ringo joined in 1962. Mm-hmm. So there's a photo of them with Pete Best from the Grapes. Uh-huh. And they've redone it, apparently. They closed it for a while. Yeah. Just after we'd been there. And they closed it, and then they redid the interior. But they had the original booth and everything there.
And they serve food, but if you look at the reviews online, I think people are not that impressed with the food. So just go there get a drink.
Well, you weren't impressed with the food. You didn't. Well, you don't really like bangers and mash, do you?
I ordered bangers and mash, and then I was like, you know what? I don't like bangers and mash.
I don't like English sausage. She doesn't like English sausage.
No, I'm not a fan.
Not a big fan of English sausage. No, didn't like it. I thought it was good anyway. But yeah, you go there to have a drink. And when we went there, Alan Williams was there and Sam Leach, both of whom were still alive at the time.
So we won't go into exactly who they are, but if you're a Beatles fan, they're Beatle people.
Sam Leach was the Beatles promoter in Liverpool in the early days.
Yeah.
Alan Williams was their first manager.
Yeah, before Brian Epstein. Yeah. So that booth is really cool. I think that's the only thing that they haven't renovated. And they used to have a picture of the Beatles sitting in that booth. It was the booth that the Beatles always sat in, apparently.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Sit in the booth, sit where, your favorite Beatle is sitting and have your own picture taken there. That's what I did anyway.
Yeah, we did that, We
have a drink and,
I remember once, the second time we went to the Grapes, because the first time we lucked out. We went in there and there was no one in there, and the booth was free, so we went and sat in there and we had food and we had a drink and we just were like, oh yeah, this is great. Second time we went in there, it was around lunchtime, and there was like a couple of people sitting there, and we're like, oh, someone's got the booth.
Yeah.
And so we went and sat over there and we were drinking, and then they left and we just moved and went into the booth and before anybody got it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like packed with tourists, surprisingly.
Surprisingly, well, we came in one day then to eat. And we came in again after that, and Sam Leach was sitting there.
Yeah.
And he was promoting a book or something. And so he got the booth. But then, so people coming in, they were like German tourists. I remember this German tourist came in and said, where is Tony Sheridan? Where is Tony Sheridan?
To Sam Leach.
To Sam Leach. And Sam Leach, oh, yeah, he's in Hamburg, you know. It's just like... And it was just like, yeah, you know. So I was like, so he came in, he was like, where's Tony Sheridan? He was just...
Dominic's just like gone back to that moment in his mind.
It was really funny because he just comes in and he just goes, where is Tony Sheridan? Like that to him, like, you know, like he was really like giving him like, you know, where is he? I need to see him now. He's like, oh, he's
what have
in
you
Hamburg,
done with him?
He's in Hamburg, you know. Tony Sheridan recorded with the Beatles in Hamburg.
Gave them their first recording opportunity, like first professional recording.
Well, he was their lead singer. The Beatles backed him on My Bonnie, a version of My Bonnie, which
went huge over there.
it went huge over there, but it didn't really do anything in the UK, except on an import single, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So the next point on the list, you might recognize from the songs that are titled after these places, Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane.
Strawberry Field now, that's right around the corner, literally, at Beaconsfield Road from Menlove Avenue.
Yeah.
And it used to be I was going to say a National Trust, a Salvation Army home. They knocked it down, and I think they've redone it now. I think it's now a Strawberry Field. It's a museum. It's a centre.
I don't know, but I'm sure I just read something fairly recently. See, there's that recently word again. That they have opened. They're going to open it up for Beatles fans.
Yeah, no, it's going to be like it's going to be like a centre because the Salvation Army home, it was like an orphanage for kids, and John used to go there, and it had like expansive grounds. It was like a Georgian or Victorian house.
Yeah.
And
he'd climb over the gate.
He'd climb over the gate and play there as a kid. Yeah. And they used to have like summer fetes there and everything.
And the gate was the only thing that you could actually see. See to take a picture. And then on either side of the gate, you know, are these brick pillars with the original word Strawberry Field.
And of course they've been graffitied over by people, you know, writing I love you, John, Beatles, whatever, you know. So
but now the gates are going to be open, I guess?
The gates are going to be open. They've restored them. Yeah. And I think they've put in the wall next to it, like a little thing so people don't have to, like, open the gates. You know, you can just go around them.
Oh, yeah. That way you can still take your picture.
Yeah, because I think they knocked down the original house that was in there, and they've rebuilt it or something. I'm not sure. I mean, people in Liverpool will know. You know, so...
and then Penny Lane is...
It's an area of Liverpool. Yeah. It's a general area of Liverpool.
There is an actual Penny Lane lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an actual Penny Lane road lane.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get your photo with the thing. But the whole the stuff they name check in the song, the barber, the roundabout, it's there. But, you know, it's kind of been Beatle, and they're saying, oh, this is what he's talking about. But it's like a district in Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth... to me, it's not necessarily worth bothering to see because
I mean, you can get off there, and you can. You're not going to see a pretty nurse selling poppies in a tray. You know, the barber. You know,
it's fun to get your picture.
The fireman rushing in.
It's fun to get your picture by the Penny Lane sign, though.
Yeah, get your picture by the City of Liverpool Penny Lane.
And then again with the James Corden episode, they stopped there, and Paul signed one of the signs, but. They've put plastic over it. It's had moisture get behind it. It's like it's been a big fiasco.
It's been a big fiasco because people were like,
They were trying to preserve it.
Because what happened is, they filmed it and Paul said, "Oh, I'm going to sign it, Paul McCartney," and they'll never believe it. And then when that episode aired,
then everybody
rushed to try and I guess chip because people are just crazy. They went to rush and chip the whole thing out or something, steal it, and people were like, "No, we've got to lacquer over it. We've got to, preserve it as much as we can, before." But people were trying to write over it, or it was kind of too late for anyone to do anything about, really. But yeah, so there was that thing. He went and hit all the old haunts, really.
Yeah. The Casbah Club is another...
The Casbah Club, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of around the Matthew Street area.
No, it's not.
No?
No, it's not.
I can't remember exactly
It's in Hayman's Green, which is in West Derby, which is...
Oh, the Casbah! I was thinking of... what's the one that we went to that wasn't open?
The Blue Angel?
No.
The Jacaranda.
The Jacaranda. That's the one I was thinking. The Casbah Club, it's way out.
The Casbah Club, the Casbah Club
we haven't made it there yet.
That's another shrine to Beatle history, because that's was owned by Pete Best, who I said before was their original drummer. Mm-hmm. It's owned by the Best family still. It was a club opened by their mother, Mona, for beat combos and everything like that. It was like a coffee club, because it was
actually in their house.
It was at their house, but I mean, she won
it was the basement of their house,
something like that. Yeah, it had 12 bedrooms or something.
Yeah, the house was huge.
Yeah, so she bought it with her winnings on the horses. She bet everything on a horse and bought this house, and decided, I'm going to go into business as this club owner. Because the London coffee scene is really hip and trendy. The coffee, all the beatniks were going there. And she's like, I want that up in Liverpool. And that's where the Beatles would end up,
Yeah.
And, that's where they found Pete Best. And as the rest, as they say, is history, which was all played out down there.
So that looks like a really, really cool place to visit. As I said, we have not made it to that site though, because it's
quite far out.
Yeah.
It's it's a couple of miles out from the city centre. Yeah. It takes a couple of, you have to get
the bus is a bit, you have to change.
Yeah, when we were looking at, I can understand how it must have been a bit of an annoyance for Pete to get to gigs, because the Beatles all kind of lived around each other. Mm-hmm. Really, maybe not George, but still they could kind of get to each other quite easily.
But yeah, that looks like it's definitely worth a visit. I think that Pete's brother owns it still. Doesn't
he? Rogue. Yeah, he owns it.
So and he's family also operates it, and
he's also got another little location now. In Matthew Street, the Beatles. The Magical History Tour, or the Magical Mystery Museum, I think it's called.
Magical History Museum,
which has Beatles memorabilia from across their career, actual authentic stuff, and of course stuff from Pete's private collection, which he had lying around the house, and he was like, you need to do something with this. Because,
so that might be worth a visit. That was... actually has been open since the last time we were in Liverpool, so we haven't been there. The Beatles Museum that we did go to was out very near to the hotel that we stayed at.
In Albert Dock, the Beatles story,
Yeah, the first time we stayed in Liverpool, and that was the Beatles story,
And for a beginner Beatles fan, that's really good.
Because it tells the story.
It tells the story. You go through and it tells the story. It's like... a Titanic museum, it tells the story as as it progresses and everything.
Yeah, I would definitely say that if you are just a passing fan, you the hits and you've got a mild interest, that's definitely probably the first place you should visit actually in Liverpool. Yeah. And then it'll get you more excited about seeing the rest of the
sites.
The sites. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know, as far as how that compares to the Magical History Museum, we can't really say.
We can't really say because we haven't been there.
We've heard good things.
We've heard very good things, and from what we've seen, it's like when we go back to Liverpool, we'll definitely go there.
It sounds a bit more in depth. So I don't think that is a place for a passing Beatles fan.
It's a little bit in depth, and it's also got the bias towards Pete because it's got Pete stuff. So it's like delving into really like the very early years.
Yeah.
So like a passing Beatles fan is only going to know John, Paul, George, and Ringo, the famous Beatles, you know, and all the hits and everything, you know.
Yeah.
And doesn't really know the backstory, shall we say.
And then as far as, Dominic mentioned George and Ringo's houses before. They are not owned by the...
They're privately owned,
They're not owned by the National Trust because someone still lives in them. I don't know about Ringo's house, actually, if someone lives there.
I don't know what they're doing with that. I think that's become like a filming location
They were going to fix it up. Ringo's house was in an area of town that basically, I guess they were just... We have not been out there, by the way. The
Dingle.
Yeah. So we have not been to the area of town where Ringo's house was. And again, these are the houses that they lived in. Actually, George's is not. Anyway, Ringo's house was like falling down. It was in an area of town that they were just letting run down.
The whole street was pretty much abandoned.
And they were going to tear it down because, you know, they want to keep the city looking nice and everything. Well, everybody petitioned to keep it.
There was a lot of like fan pressure to keep it going. And as such, it was the streets were used as like filming locations for period dramas, like stuff that was set in the 1960s, stuff that's set in the 40s even, and of course Peaky Blinders.
Yeah,
that was a major area that they filmed in, and I think they've done them up now. They're doing them up to be like exterior houses to look
for period
classics. Yeah, you know, for like Peaky Blinders and stuff. You know.
Yeah. So that's cool.
So yeah, that's the way. Yeah, that's
whether you'll ever be able to see inside, though.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not going to look like anything like Ringo's house did anyway, because I think it's completely been gutted and.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
George's teenage home is owned by, is owned privately. You can't really see in it unless you.
It's an Upton Green out by Speke, out by the airport. Yeah. So yeah.
You have to book a specific tour in Liverpool in order to see inside that house because it is privately owned. But the house he was born in,
you can go and
if you've ever seen the Beatles anthology, he says I was born at
12 Arnold Grove.
Yeah. And that is a house that you can go see. Someone does live in there, so, be respectful, obviously. But you can just come right up to it and see the outside, take a picture of it. And if you're a big George Harrison fan, definitely recommend that. It's a really cute little house in, like, sort of, I don't know, do you call it a cul-de-sac in Britain?
Yeah, I mean, it's a
like a dead-end street.
It's a dead-end street, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the last thing on our list, again, is, like... for the
more people,
more hardcore Beatles fans.
It's LIPA, the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts, which Paul McCartney himself is a patron, and it's Paul McCartney's old school. It used to be the old Liverpool Grammar School, the Liverpool Institute.
Yeah,
and people
where
like Paul and George went. Yeah. And a host of other people. I don't know if you remember, if for people in the UK remember the newsreader Peter Sissons. He went there too, and Neil Aspinall, who was their roadie, went there too, and that's how they all kind of like knew each other and stuff.
So if you know Beatles history at all, you know that John and George's school was right next door to the art college that John went to.
Yeah.
And they would go in there at lunchtime. They'd all like work on their songs together.
Work on songs, sing songs, play guitar, sing old Buddy Holly numbers.
And so John's art college has now been enveloped by LIPA as well.
Yeah, they bought the buildings. Yeah, so it's like it's all
part of the campus.
It's part of the campus.
Mm-hmm. So if you're big on that part of their history,
go see it, yeah,
you can go see that. They're still standing. It's just called LIPA now.
Yeah.
But to me, that was cool too. Going around and seeing that.
LIPA, yeah.
Yeah. One more thing though, really quickly before we have to go, and we are out of time. But
we're out of time.
We don't have it. We don't have it on the list, obviously. And we didn't make it there either. We have yet to make it there. But the church where
St.
John
Peter's
and Paul
Church,
met,
where John and Paul met, which is again around the corner from Strawberry Fields. and we didn't make it there for some whatever reason.
It's a way. It's a little.
The only
bit
time
of
we've seen Strawberry Fields is in the dark, I think.
Yeah. I think we just went there once.
We only went there once, for some reason. We need to go back and do a tour.
Yeah, we do.
And you can come with us.
Maybe we'll make a YouTube video out of it.
Well, definitely. I think that's definitely what we're gonna do.
Yeah. So, anyway, we hope you found this interesting or possibly useful if you have a Liverpool trip in your future.
Yes.
If you did, please share it with your Beatley friends or anybody you know that might be remotely interested in Beatles sites in Liverpool or just Liverpool in general. Because like I said, you don't have to be into the Beatles to find these things interesting if you're just into history in general. And I think that's gonna do it.
That's it.
Yeah. Obviously, there's a ton more Beatles sites in Liverpool.
Yeah.
But these are just the ones that we consider to be the main ones you need to see.
Yeah.
We didn't mention the big new statues that they have too.
Well, on the waterfront, there's on the around the pier,
larger than life,
near to the Mersey ferry entrance.
Yeah. So
to get on the ferry. So
we haven't seen those.
We haven't seen those either. They just put them up in the last couple of years.
But they're absolutely gorgeous, so we definitely think those are probably a must if you're a Beatles fan.
Yeah.
Go and get your picture with them. But thank you as always for listening. If you enjoyed this, or if you just enjoy our podcast, if you find them interesting at all, informational, funny, whatever, please give us a rating on iTunes or wherever you're listening. If you can do it on Spotify, I'm not sure. But wherever you can give us a rating, we really appreciate you leaving us a rating, a review. It helps other people find our podcast so that we can grow our audience and
and we can continue talking to you.
Yeah.
Because we know you want to hear us.
Well, we hope anyway.
We know it. You love it.
But thanks for listening. We appreciate you as always, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.